Why did one quiet conversation on a balcony ruin everything I'd built? What happens when a moment that looked innocent turns into public proof that I crossed a line? Can love survive when silence, screenshots, and a lawful plan replace trust? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Avadni, and I swear I didn't mean for one quiet moment on a balcony to destroy everything. It was supposed to be harmless. A little break from the noise, a drink in my hand, soft music below, city lights stretching forever. I was talking with Leo from work, just small talk about deadlines and travel, nothing serious. But someone snapped a picture, and in that frame, it looked like more. You know how people love a scandal, how fast they turn assumptions into truth. By morning, my phone was blowing up. Messages, tags, whispers at the office. Jonas didn't yell when he saw it. He just went quiet, and that scared me more than shouting ever could. He started writing things down, setting alarms labeled meetings, and spending nights in the guest room. I told myself he was sulking, that I'd fix it with a smile and a post proving we were fine. But now, looking back, I can see that silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. He wasn't ignoring me. He was preparing for something I never thought he'd do. Fight back, calmly, lawfully, and in public. I still remember the balcony lights flickering against the glass like they were waiting for me to mess up. It was the second night of the company retreat, that awkward mix of networking and pretending to have fun. The hotel was too polished, too perfect. Everyone was trying too hard to impress the higher-ups. I told myself I'd earned a little air, a little freedom from the fake laughter and clinking glasses. That's how I ended up outside, leaning against the railing, pretending to text while the city below blinked like it was alive. Leo came out a few minutes later. He was one of the new guys from the creative team, charming in that effortless way that made everyone like him. He asked if I was hiding or networking. I laughed and said maybe both. He said he liked women who knew how to balance things. His tone was light, harmless even, but the way he looked at me lingered longer than polite. I should have gone back inside right then, but I didn't. I said something about the skyline, how it felt endless. He stepped closer, said I looked better in the reflection than the city did. I laughed again, too loud, pretending it was a joke. From the ballroom behind us, I could still hear the music. Someone shouted my name, but I didn't answer. I told myself it would look rude to leave mid-conversation. Leo offered me his drink. I said I shouldn't, but I took it anyway. My phone buzzed, Jonas's name lighting up the screen. "Where are you?" I looked at the message and felt that tiny irritation rise up. He was always checking, always timing my replies. I typed, stepped outside for air, but didn't hit send. Leo asked if everything was okay. I said my boyfriend worries too much, and he said, "That's what happens when you don't give them enough to do." He smiled like it was just a tease, but there was a pause between us that wasn't professional anymore. Someone opened the balcony door. A coworker came out to take a selfie with the view, laughing, and I shifted away from Leo just in time. The flash caught us both in the frame, my hand still holding his glass. I didn't even think about it until later, when I saw her post. At that moment, it was just another night, one where I felt seen for the first time in months. Back inside, the air was heavier. People were gathered near the bar, still laughing about something. Jonas texted again, "Going to bed. Don't stay out too late." I stared at the words, half guilty, half annoyed. Why did he always have to sound like a parent? I typed good night but left it unsent again. I told myself I'd text later. Leo handed me my phone back. I hadn't even noticed I'd set it down. He said, "Careful, or your man will think I stole you." I said, "He already thinks everyone wants to." We both laughed. It sounded too familiar, too practiced. The next morning, the sun felt too bright. the kind that makes you wish you'd stayed quiet. I woke to my phone blowing up with notifications. Someone had tagged me in a video from the balcony, me and Leo talking close, the city lights behind us. The caption read, "Networking goals." I clicked it and froze. From that angle, it looked like we were about to kiss. My heart started racing. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that people exaggerate online, that Jonas never checks social media anyway. But when I came down for breakfast, everyone was whispering. 2 co-workers stopped talking as soon as I walked in. Leo waved casually from the corner, but I didn't wave back. I sat with the HR manager and 2 others, pretending not to notice the looks. One of them finally asked, "So, fun night on the balcony?" I laughed like it was nothing. "Just catching up about work." They smiled in that way that says, "Sure you were." Jonas texted mid-breakfast. "Didn't know you were such a celebrity. Nice video." My stomach dropped. He'd seen it. I typed, "It's not what it looks like," but deleted it before sending. I told myself to wait until I saw him in person. Texts always make things worse. Back in my room, I looked at the video again. It wasn't even long, 10 seconds. Just me leaning close to hear Leo over the wind, him smiling. But it looked intimate. Too intimate. I scrolled through the comments. Cute couple. Work husband alert. She's glowing. Every emoji made my skin crawl. I texted the girl who posted it, asked her to take it down. She said, "Everyone already saw it, so it'd be weird now." That's when I realized the damage was already done. Jonas called that evening. His voice was calm, too calm. He asked how the retreat was. I said it was fine. He asked if I'd had a nice talk on the balcony. I said it was just networking, and he said, "That's one word for it." I told him he was being ridiculous. He said he didn't want to fight. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. It felt like a door quietly closing. I asked if he believed me. He said, "I don't think I need to believe or not believe. I just saw." Then he hung up. I spent the rest of the night scrolling through every message, every clip, trying to convince myself it wasn't that bad. Leo texted me once saying, "People are overreacting. Ignore it." I typed, "Jonas is furious but never sent it." I didn't want Leo to think I cared that much. I didn't want anyone to know how scared I felt. The next morning, Jonas didn't reply to my good morning text. I checked our shared calendar out of habit and noticed something new, a reminder titled Downtown 11:45 a.m. He never puts reminders like that. I told myself it must be a meeting. Still, it stuck in my head all day. At work, Leo avoided eye contact. HR scheduled a casual follow-up about professional conduct. My boss said the company couldn't control what people posted, but hinted that perception mattered. I said it wasn't my fault if people misread things. He nodded like someone trying not to argue. By the time I got home that evening, Jonas wasn't there. His shoes were lined neatly by the door, but his jacket was gone. On the counter, 2 mugs, his spotless, mine half full and cold. It felt symbolic, though I hated that word. I called him, no answer. I tried to act normal, started dinner, played music, pretended this was all just another misunderstanding. But when I passed his office door, I noticed the sound of the printer starting up. A blank page slid out, then another. The faint smell of toner filled the air. I thought maybe he was printing work documents, but when I peeked inside later, the pages were gone. The desk was spotless, a single closed folder in the corner, labeled Household. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just organizing bills. He's always been like that, too structured, too neat. I said out loud, "He'll calm down. He always does." My voice sounded small in the empty room. I didn't realize how much space silence can take up until that night. The next morning, Jonas came home just before sunrise. He looked exhausted but calm. I tried to start light, said we needed to talk. He nodded but didn't sit down. I started explaining how the balcony wasn't what it looked like how people exaggerate. He listened, hands in his pockets. When I said I'd never cheat, he said, "I didn't say you did." I asked if he believed me, and he said, "Belief is a story we tell ourselves when we don't want evidence." I told him he was acting like a detective. He said quietly, "Maybe I am." Then he picked up his coffee mug, rinsed it carefully, and set it down on the opposite counter from mine. Separate corners, separate worlds. I wanted to scream, to make him argue so I could win something, anything. But he just left the kitchen and closed the door behind him. The click sounded final. I stood there alone, staring at the mugs, telling myself he was just overreacting, that once the noise died down, he'd realize it was all harmless. But deep down, I knew something had shifted, something small and quiet, but permanent. The kind of change you can't undo with an apology, or a smile, or even love. The office felt colder than usual that Monday morning. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the way people suddenly stopped mid-sentence when I walked in. I could tell the video was still making rounds. 2 coworkers by the coffee machine whispered something, then smiled at me like they were pretending not to know. I smiled back anyway because that's what you do. You act normal until everyone believes it. I told myself people forget fast, that by next week there would be another clip to gossip about. Still, I could feel their eyes on me all morning, following me to my desk like a shadow. My manager, Carol, stopped by after lunch. She said we should have a quick word in her office. Her tone was sweet but too careful, the way people talk when they're about to say something uncomfortable. Inside, she closed the door and folded her hands. She said the company encouraged team bonding, but wanted to remind everyone about professionalism. I nodded, pretending to understand what that meant. She mentioned that clients sometimes checked our social pages and that public perception could affect future contracts. I said the clip was taken out of context. She smiled, said she understood, and handed me a small card for the corporate PR team in case I wanted to clarify anything. When I got back to my desk, Leo was there leaning on the cubicle wall. He grinned like nothing was wrong. I asked why he wasn't at his meeting, and he said, "Meetings can wait, damage control can't." He whispered that everyone was overreacting, that he'd already joked about the whole thing to make it seem harmless. "You're welcome," he said, like he'd done me a favor. I didn't thank him. I just opened my email and saw one from HR with the subject line, "Follow up." My heart raced, even though it said nothing serious, just a reminder about company image and conduct. Still, it felt like a warning, wearing a smile. That evening, I went home early. Jonas's car was already in the driveway, which surprised me. Usually, he stayed late at work when we argued. I stepped inside quietly, expecting tension, but instead, the apartment was spotless. Even the couch pillows were aligned like a showroom. He was in the kitchen reading something on his tablet. When he saw me, he nodded and said dinner was in the fridge. No tone, no anger, just calm. I hated that calm more than shouting. I tried joking, said he was acting like a stranger. He said he was just adjusting routines. I sat across from him at the counter, waiting for him to look at me. When he didn't, I said, "You can stop being mad now. Everyone knows it was nothing." He asked, "Nothing or nothing, you'll admit?" I rolled my eyes. He didn't argue. He just finished his water, rinsed the glass, and walked away. A small notebook sat on the counter where he'd been. I flipped it open and saw rows of short lines. Dates, times, small notes like 11:45, call, 8 to 10, arrival. Nothing else. I closed it quickly before he came back. Later that night, I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, pretending nothing had happened. I brought 2 glasses of wine to the living room and turned on a movie. He sat beside me but left a space between us wide enough for the silence to fill. I made little comments, laughed at scenes, tried to draw him in. He smiled once, politely. When the movie ended, he said he was tired and went to the guest room. I sat there alone with the credits rolling, pretending I wasn't the one who'd been dismissed. The next morning, I found a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Meeting, personal 9:30. He never used notes. I told myself it was work. But when I checked the digital calendar we shared for bills and chores, there was another new event marked private. The description just said downtown. My chest tightened, though I didn't know why. I wanted to ask, but that would mean admitting I was checking. Instead, I brewed coffee, left both mugs on the counter like normal, and waited for him to say something. He didn't. He took his mug and left without a word. At work, the whispers hadn't stopped. Someone had made a meme out of the balcony video. It showed me smiling with the caption, "Networking." She took it literally. I tried to laugh it off, posted a story with a sarcastic caption about being too popular for comfort. Leo commented with a fire emoji. My friends from another department sent laughing faces. I told myself that was proof people didn't care as much as Jonas thought. But deep down, I knew the laughter wasn't the kind that fades. It was the kind that sticks. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a message from Jonas. "Hope your day's productive." It was short but sharp, like a reminder that he knew exactly what people were saying. I typed, trying to stay focused, and added a heart emoji. He didn't reply. An hour later, another text popped up. "We'll talk later. Don't make plans." I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending I wasn't waiting for that talk. When I got home, the blinds were half closed, the apartment dim. Jonas was sitting on the couch with a small folder on his lap. I tried to lighten the mood, said, "If this is another intervention about my social life, can we schedule it for tomorrow?" He looked at me calmly and said, "It's not about your social life. It's about how you handle consequences." I asked what that meant. He said, "You care more about how things look than what they are." I told him appearances matter in marketing. He said, "So does truth." I laughed to keep the edge off, said he sounded like a lecture. He said, "Maybe you need one." That silence after felt colder than any argument we'd ever had. He handed me the folder. Inside were printouts, screenshots of posts, the viral video link, even a transcript of comments. My stomach turned. I asked why he'd collected all that. He said, "For records." I snapped that he was being dramatic. He said he didn't think so. Then he stood, took his coffee mug, and rinsed it out again. Always that ritual, quiet, deliberate. He left it upside down on the counter next to mine, perfectly aligned. After he went to bed, I opened the folder again. On the last page, there was a note in his handwriting. Household, utilities, banking, lease copy. It wasn't angry or emotional, just tidy. I stared at it until the letters blurred. He was organizing, not reacting, planning something. That scared me more than any threat could. The next morning, I woke to find him already dressed, typing something on his laptop. He looked composed, distant. I asked if we were okay. He said, "We're moving forward." I asked what that meant. He said, "You'll see." Before I could press, his phone buzzed. A message flashed briefly, an unknown number, the preview showing. "Document ready for pickup." He turned the screen down. I tried to act casual, said I'd make breakfast. He said he'd eat later. The door closed behind him, and the apartment went silent again. I called my mother during lunch to vent. She said Jonas was just sulking, that men hate public embarrassment because their egos are fragile. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said. "You're allowed to have fun." I wanted to believe her. I told her he'd been writing things down, keeping folders. She laughed, said he was bluffing. "He'll come around," she said. "They always do when they realize you're not chasing them." I hung up feeling lighter for a moment, until I opened social media and saw the video had been shared again, this time on a local gossip page. That night, Jonas came home later than usual. He smelled faintly of printer toner. I asked if he'd been working overtime. He said, "You could call it that." I asked if he wanted dinner. He said he'd already eaten. When I tried to talk about us, he said, there was nothing to fix. "We just see the world differently," he said. I told him that's what couples therapy is for. He said, "We're past therapy." Then he went to the guest room again, leaving the light on just long enough for me to notice the new folder on his desk labeled Archive A. I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through my phone, trying to convince myself that if I ignored the tension long enough, it would dissolve. The likes on my post had slowed, the comments fading into digital dust. I told myself this would blow over soon, that Jonas would realize everyone had forgotten. But the truth pressed heavier each night. The silence wasn't healing anything. It was sharpening into something deliberate, something final. The weekend came, and I thought I could reclaim some control. There was a rooftop bar event with our friends, the kind that always felt like a small victory parade for me. The city stretched out below, twinkling lights like confetti. I made sure to wear something flattering, knowing cameras were everywhere. Jonas had said he was staying in that night. I told myself that meant freedom, that I could enjoy attention without consequence. Leo found me the moment I stepped onto the terrace. He twirled me into a dance near the edge and I laughed, feeling that rush, the one that comes when everyone sees you shine. I saw Jonas near the bar, arms crossed, his expression flat, watching. I pretended not to notice him, focusing on the way Leo leaned in close, whispering something funny into my ear. The crowd around us clapped and hooted when we moved together. My phone buzzed constantly with friends texting about how great I looked. I smiled at every notification, feeding on the energy. Someone lifted their phone. I saw the flash, the red dot of recording. My stomach twisted, but I shrugged. If Jonas wanted proof, fine. I'd make it look like fun. I kept dancing, laughed too loudly at Leo's jokes, leaned closer than I should have, just enough for the camera to catch it. When we finally paused, I caught my breath and noticed Jonas had moved closer, still quiet, still observing. I told Leo we should go inside, but he hesitated, grinning. I whispered, "It's okay, he's fine. He's calm. He always is." I knew he wasn't fine. That calm stare cut deeper than any argument I'd ever had. Back inside, the friends were clustered around the bar, phones out. Everyone was replaying clips, laughing, sending them to group chats. I joined in, acting as if I weren't aware Jonas was standing silently in the corner. Someone clinked a glass in my direction. I raised mine, grinned, and toasted to fun, freedom, and friendship. The crowd echoed it. Jonas didn't react. He just watched, hands folded, jaw tight. Later, when we stepped out to the balcony for air, Leo put his hand on my shoulder. I laughed, said he should back off, but didn't push him. Jonas didn't say anything. I told myself he was jealous, that he'd make some dramatic move, maybe pull me aside, confront me, but he didn't. He just stood there, quiet, expression unreadable. That night, at home, I tried to lighten the mood. I said the event had been fun, joked about the videos going viral. Jonas didn't respond. I laughed nervously, told him I was exaggerating when I said it was a big deal. He sat on the couch, fingers tapping on a notebook. I glanced at it. Rows of dates, times, events, sat rooftop video posted. I froze, realizing he'd logged it already. I tried to distract myself with wine, music, pretending it was just a silly night. Jonas didn't drink. He didn't say anything. When I teased him about taking things too seriously, he said, "Someone has to notice." I asked what he meant. He said, "The record won't lie." The next morning, I noticed a clean sheet of paper sticking out from his printer. I asked if he'd been working late. He said it was just sorting information. I peeked and saw columns, dates, posts, events, notes. I laughed to keep calm, but my pulse quickened. Every event, every like, every comment was listed. My name, the balcony, the rooftop, the posts. It was all there, neat and deliberate. At work, the whispers hadn't stopped. Someone mentioned the rooftop video again. I smiled, said it was nothing, but my chest tightened. Leo tried joking about how I had everyone fooled. I laughed, but my mind wasn't on him. It was on Jonas. I wondered if he would confront me, yell, demand an explanation. He never did. The silence was worse than any argument could have been. That evening, I came home early, thinking I could distract him with charm. I poured wine, lit candles, tried to create a warm atmosphere. Jonas was in the kitchen, moving folders around, careful, precise. I asked about dinner. He said he'd eaten. I tried joking about the video, said everyone overreacts. He replied, not everyone. I smiled awkwardly, pretending I didn't feel the edge in his words. I noticed something new. His desk was reorganized. Folders labeled bank, utilities, archive. He never labeled things. I asked casually why. He said, for order. I told him it was obsessive. He said, some people need a record to trust. That line made me shiver. I told myself he was bluffing. I didn't believe he would follow through. Later, I caught a glimpse of him writing on his phone. The screen read, follow up. I asked who he was texting. He said nothing, just walked away. I tried to convince myself I was safe, that it was all performance, that he was just dramatic. But the words follow up lingered, heavy in my mind. That night, I checked the social media tags again. The rooftop video had gone further, shared by coworkers, friends, even clients. Comments calling me confident, radiant, alive. I screenshotted the best ones, sent them to my group chat, tried to prove myself right. Jonas's silence was louder than applause, though. It pressed against my chest. When I went to bed, he was already there. The guest room door closed softly behind him. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every glance, every recorded clip, every tiny moment logged. It wasn't just the balcony anymore. It was every step, every smile, every laugh I thought harmless. The record was growing, and I could feel the slow, quiet inevitability of what was coming. I told myself I could handle it. I could laugh, charm, manipulate. But in the darkness, the thought whispered in my head, he wasn't losing control. I was. The apartment felt different that week, heavier somehow. I told myself I was imagining it, that the stress from work and the viral videos was coloring everything. But small details kept standing out. The folded guest blanket on the spare bed, the 2 mugs on opposite counters, his side spotless, mine half-used and cold. I tried to ignore it, but every time I passed the kitchen, the sight reminded me of the space between us, a gap wider than I had ever expected. I decided to invite friends over that Friday evening. The plan was simple. Make everything look normal, charming, like Jonas and I were just a couple that laughed through everything. My friends arrived in waves, bringing wine and snacks. The apartment buzzed with chatter, and I felt some control return. Jonas stayed in his office, saying he had work, but I could see him through the glass of the guest room door, quiet, hands resting on a folder. I told myself it was nothing. He always worked late. Around 8, Leo arrived, claiming he had something to drop off. I led him to the balcony. Just air and skyline, I said, smiling. He leaned in to compliment my outfit. I laughed, a little too loudly, and glanced at the window. Jonas was there, standing behind the glass, unreadable. I waved subtly, but he didn't move. I whispered to Leo, "He's dramatic." Leo smirked and said, "You're lucky he's calm." I nodded, trying to sound breezy, but my pulse quickened. Inside, the group was laughing, sharing stories, commenting on the balcony video. I joined in, feigning amusement, pretending I wasn't aware of Jonas's presence outside. One friend noticed me checking my phone and teased, "Still worried about your boyfriend?" I laughed, shrugged. "He's fine. Always dramatic, never decisive." The group chuckled. Jonas's silence, however, cut deeper than any joke. After the first round of wine, I noticed a faint smell of toner drifting from the office. Curious, I peeked inside. His laptop was open, the screen glowing with the spreadsheet. I saw rows of dates and times, posts and events, all neatly labeled. My stomach twisted. It was the rooftop night, the balcony, the viral video, all logged in meticulous detail. I closed the door quickly, pretending not to notice. Later, Jonas appeared briefly in the kitchen, holding a small folder. He didn't speak, just set it down on the counter opposite mine. I glanced at it. The label read, Archive A, Events. I wanted to pick it up, rip it open, see what he was keeping. Instead, I told myself it was harmless, that he was just staying organized. He smiled faintly and went back to the office, leaving me alone with the buzzing anxiety. That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. Every movement, every laugh, every glance at Leo replayed like a video loop. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had been careful, that Jonas's overreaction was unreasonable. But a part of me knew the calmness, the folders, the organized logs. It was preparation, something I hadn't anticipated. The next day, Jonas left early, mentioning errands downtown at 9:25 a.m. I asked casually what for. He said nothing, just a small nod and a tight-lipped smile. Later, I noticed my phone buzzing with another tag. Someone had reposted the rooftop video with a caption about confidence and networking. I laughed with my friends, saying, "People overreact." But I felt the tension settle in my chest. Jonas wasn't reacting with anger, he was reacting with calculation. That evening, I tried to reclaim normalcy. I suggested dinner out with friends, picking the restaurant carefully, hoping to create a distraction. Jonas declined, saying he had work. I argued, insisting we could all go together, but he just smiled faintly and said, "I'll stay here. Make sure everything is in order." I told myself he was overreacting, that I would charm him later, but the note of finality in his voice lingered. When our friends left, the apartment felt empty, heavier than before. I tried to move freely, laugh at nothing, pour wine for myself. But every glance at the counters, the guest room, the folders, reminded me that he had started keeping track, quietly, deliberately. I wanted confrontation, a fight, some display of emotion so I could manipulate it, charm it, or spin it my way. But nothing came. The silence was deliberate, sharp, and cutting. On Saturday morning, I woke to find Jonas gone. His side of the bed perfectly smooth. The folders I'd noticed the night before were neatly aligned in the office. I brewed coffee, sat at the counter, staring at the two mugs, the clean one, his, the half-empty one, mine. I tried to convince myself it was routine, that he was just avoiding drama. But then I saw a sticky note on the fridge. "Bring forms." I didn't know what forms. He never left reminders. My pulse quickened. I called my mother later that day to vent. She laughed, said, "He's just sulking. Don't worry, he'll come around when he sees you're harmless." I tried to believe her, but the thought of the spreadsheet, the folders, the organized records made me doubt. I told myself I'd handle it with charm, laughter, and control. But as the evening darkened, the apartment felt smaller, every corner holding evidence of his quiet precision. By Sunday, the tension had multiplied. Every step I took, every laugh I gave, every glance at my phone reminded me of the rooftop night, the balcony, the posts, the files. I told myself I could ignore it, pretend I was untouchable. But the signs of preparation were everywhere. The folders, the sticky notes, the calendar entries, the faint hum of the printer. Jonas's calm wasn't weakness, it was planning. And deep down, I realized this weekend had been a turning point. What I thought was just amusement and freedom had become a record, meticulously compiled, quietly growing, and completely out of my control. I sat on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking I could still charm my way back. I told myself he'd understand, that he'd forgive, that he'd laugh when he saw it was harmless. But the thought pressed in, heavier with every breath. He wasn't ignoring me. He was building something I couldn't see yet, something deliberate, and I had no idea how to stop it. The week started with another silence that felt intentional. Jonas barely spoke to me unless it was about groceries or bills. The quiet stretched through every room, folding itself around the furniture. I tried to fill it with sound, music, phone calls, laughter that felt too loud. I told myself I was fine. That distance was just his way of cooling off. But the air between us wasn't cooling, it was settling. Midweek, he came home early with that same calm expression. I asked if he wanted dinner together. He said he had already eaten, then asked if I'd checked the mail. I said no. He nodded, opened the drawer, and pulled out a few envelopes, setting one aside before locking the drawer again. I stared at the lock. It wasn't new, but I'd never seen him use it before. That night, I called my mother again. She told me to stop trying so hard. Men like him need space, she said. If you chase, he'll run further. I told her he wasn't running. He was freezing me out. She laughed, said I was being dramatic, that everything could still be fixed if I just let time work. I wanted to believe her. The next day, Clara, his sister, called me out of nowhere. Her tone was polite but sharp. She said she wanted to check on me. I said I was fine. She didn't believe me. She said Jonas had been coming by their parents' house lately, bringing files and asking about legal documents. My throat tightened. I asked what kind of files. She said she didn't know, just that he'd mentioned handling things properly. I tried to laugh it off, said he was just organized. She didn't respond, just said, "He's calm now. That's when he's most serious," and hung up. When Jonas came home that night, I confronted him. I asked why he'd been talking to his sister. He said she was family. I said she was stirring drama. He said, "You're good at creating it. She's good at naming it." I wanted to scream, to make him argue, to break that perfect stillness. Instead, he went to the guest room and shut the door. I opened his laptop while he was showering. The password hadn't changed. The desktop was unnervingly clean. Just a few folders labeled Archive A, Archive B, and Household. I clicked Archive A. Inside were subfolders, dates, events, screenshots. One video link stood out. It was the rooftop night, cropped, edited, time-stamped. My stomach dropped. He had downloaded everything, every post, every tag, every picture where I smiled next to Leo. When I heard the shower turn off, I closed the laptop and sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. He came out, towel around his neck, looked at me for a long time. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked. My pulse spiked. I said I didn't know what he meant. He said, "Then stop pretending you don't." He walked past me, calm as ever. I wanted to throw something to make him react, but he wouldn't give me that satisfaction. The next morning, I found a small card on the counter with the words "paper drop, 10:15 a.m. I asked if he'd written it. He said, "Reminders help me stay focused." I asked what kind of paper. He said, "The important kind." Then he grabbed his jacket and left. That evening, I had dinner with my parents. I tried to act normal, talking about work, but my mother noticed the tension. She said Jonas just needed to be reminded of what he had. "He's lucky to have you," she said. "Show him you're confident." So I decided to take control again. I texted everyone, friends, co-workers, even Leo, and organized a family brunch for Sunday. I made it sound cheerful, saying it was time to celebrate moving forward. I invited both families, thinking that public comfort would prove everything was fine. Jonas agreed to come without hesitation, which almost scared me more than if he'd refused. When Sunday arrived, the restaurant felt too bright, every clink of glass echoing. My parents sat beside me, smiling, while Jonas's family gathered opposite us. Leo showed up late, as usual, sliding into a chair with that smug grin. I told myself I was in control again. I joked about the balcony night, said people online had nothing better to do. My mother laughed, nodding. but no one from his side smiled. Jonas sat quietly, his phone face down on the table. When the waiter came to take orders, he said he'd already eaten. I tried to lighten the moment, saying, "He's been on a diet of silence and spreadsheets lately." My father chuckled awkwardly, but Jonas didn't move. Clara's eyes stayed fixed on him, like she knew something I didn't. Halfway through the meal, I reached for Jonas's hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold it either. "We're okay," I said softly, smiling for the table. "Every couple has misunderstandings." Jonas looked at me, his eyes unreadable, and said, "Some misunderstandings need signatures, not apologies." My fork froze in midair. No one spoke for several seconds. My mother tried to laugh, saying he was joking. He said, "I don't joke about paperwork." Leo shifted uncomfortably, whispering that he had to leave soon. My parents tried to change the subject, but the tension hung heavy. Jonas checked his watch, then placed some cash on the table. "I'll handle things properly this week," he said quietly. "You won't have to guess anymore." He stood, nodded politely to everyone, and walked out. The sound of the door closing behind him hit me harder than any argument we'd ever had. My mother squeezed my hand, whispering that he was bluffing. Clara just shook her head and said, "He's not." When I got home that evening, his car wasn't in the driveway. The guest room was almost empty. Just a few boxes stacked neatly, the desk cleared except for one folder labeled "Pending." I opened it, hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a date written at the top, Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. No notes, no explanation. I waited for him to come home that night, pacing, checking my phone, convincing myself he was just trying to scare me. At 10 p.m., I texted, "Can we talk?" The message delivered, but he didn't reply. By midnight, I gave up and sat on the couch, staring at the silent apartment. I thought of all the times I had laughed at him for being boring, all the moments I'd mistaken steadiness for weakness. The quiet he left behind wasn't weakness. It was design. Every mug, every folder, every calendar entry was a piece of something bigger. And now it was moving toward me, steady, lawful, unstoppable. I fell asleep on the couch with the lights on, half hoping I'd wake up and find him standing in the kitchen like nothing had happened. But the apartment stayed still, as if it was already his no more. Tuesday morning came bright and cold, the kind of day that makes everything look sharper. I hadn't slept. My stomach twisted from coffee and dread. Jonas still hadn't come home. The apartment felt staged, blank counters, folded towels, not a trace of warmth. I put on a blazer, something neutral, convincing myself I'd find him and talk. He couldn't end things like this, not with silence, not with paperwork. By 9, I was downtown, clutching my bag so tight my fingers ached. His office tower gleamed like a mirror. The lobby smelled of metal and fresh paint. People hurried past, tapping badges, not looking at anyone. I rehearsed my speech in my head, something light, something that made me look calm. I was going to tell him we were fine, that he didn't need to make a scene. The receptionist looked up when I gave my name. Her expression changed, polite but guarded. "One moment, Ms. Cross," she said. She made a quick call, murmured something I couldn't catch, then nodded toward the seating area. I sat down, heart pounding, pretending to scroll through my phone. Every minute stretched. The elevator chimed. I looked up, expecting Jonas. Instead, a man in a grey suit walked toward me. He carried a sealed envelope and a clipboard. "Ms. Evan Cross?" he asked. I nodded automatically. "I have something for you." He handed me the envelope, heavy and official. The paper felt cold in my hands. I tried to laugh. "This must be a mistake," I said. He didn't answer, just pointed to a line on the clipboard. "Please confirm receipt." I stared at the spot where my name was printed. The pen trembled in my fingers as I signed. People were watching. 2 employees nearby paused, whispering. The air hummed with quiet curiosity. The man thanked me and turned to leave. I called after him, asking what it was. He said, "Filing notice," and walked toward the elevators. My throat closed. The envelope suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. I stood there frozen, unable to move, until I saw Jonas step out from behind the glass security wall. He wasn't surprised to see me. His tie was straight, his expression calm, almost gentle. For a second I thought he'd walk over, take the envelope back, say it was all a test, but he just stopped a few steps away. We looked at each other through the noise of footsteps and phones. I whispered, "What did you do?" He said, "What I said I would. I handled it properly." I wanted to scream that it was just a balcony, just a joke, just a video, but the words wouldn't come. He looked at me, not angry, not cold, just done. "You wanted freedom," he said quietly. "Now you have it." Then he turned away and spoke to the receptionist, his voice low and steady. I opened the envelope because I had to. My name at the top, his name beside it. Legal language that blurred as my eyes filled. Petition for dissolution. Asset inventory attached. A temporary order regarding possession of the apartment and joint accounts. Everything formal, lawful, clean. My name repeated again and again in black ink. My signature line already waiting. I heard my phone buzz, notifications piling in. Someone from work had posted a picture from that morning, me standing in the lobby, envelope in hand, face pale, captioned, "When karma delivers in person." My chest burned. I dropped the phone into my bag, gripping the envelope tighter, as if it might vanish. Jonas walked toward the elevator. I followed instinctively, calling his name once. He didn't turn. The doors closed between us with a soft, mechanical sigh. For a long moment, all I could see was my own reflection, tired, confused, holding proof that everything was over. I stood there until security asked if I needed help finding the exit. I said no, my voice small. Outside, the city buzzed like nothing had changed. Cars passed, people laughed, someone held coffee in the sunlight. I walked to the curb, the papers still pressed to my chest. My reflection in the glass doors behind me looked like a stranger, one who had finally run out of excuses. The wind picked up, tugging at my hair. I looked down at the top page again, the neat rows of print, his calm handwriting beside the date. Tuesday, 9:30 a.m., just like the note in his folder. The timing had been exact. I had spent weeks thinking his silence was punishment. It wasn't. It was preparation. The papers fluttered in my grip as another gust swept through the street. I held them tighter, afraid they'd fly away, afraid they wouldn't. Around me, the city carried on, indifferent. And for the first time since the balcony, since the laughter, since the quiet, I realized there was nothing left to say, nothing left to fix. Only the sound of footsteps fading and the hollow echo of my own breathing as the door behind me clicked shut for good.